Hi, Simon here. I did a talk at Developme last week about indie PR and business development, and a lot of people asked me to record it. They didn't have the facilities at the talk, so I decided to quickly do it before work today, which is why I look like trash, because it's about 9 in the morning and I had to get up about 6 so I could set this up. My talk is called Killing the Lucky Indie Myth, How to Build a Sustainable Microstudio. And it's focusing on some of the things that have annoyed me a lot about how people have been talking about the industry and how indies have been treated and how indies think they should be treated. So first of all, this is my YouTube channel, so you probably know who I am already, but if you don't, for this nice new studio here, this is our office, and we have 3 full-time staff now. We've got 3 contractors on site, off-site, but off-site, on-site. We have big overheads now, we have costs, we have to cover them. So if you don't know, we have a game called Maia, which if you're subscribed to this channel, you probably know already. It's a niche interest game. It's Kickstarter and Indiegogo funded. It's alpha release kind of model, and we're in Steam Early Access. Previous to this, obviously, I worked on VVV. I worked at Mode 7 for a bit, and I also worked in AAA, so I have experience at Frontier and at Natural Motion, and before that I did a lot of freelance 3D for about 10 years. So that's my background in this area. So what is the lucky indie myth? Well, that's a good question. First of all, it's people saying stuff like this. X got lucky, Notch got lucky, Mike Bithell got lucky, Introversion got lucky. There's a lot of people writing off people's success as an unknown variable. If you're talking about luck in business, people look down on you very quickly because it kind of points out that you're completely clueless as to what's going on. I mean, Notch was very fortunate, but Notch did a lot of very worthwhile things. He did a lot of very good PR. It may have been unknowingly, but he did it, and that's worth looking at. So the next one is, I did exactly what they told me on Gama Sutra. Gama Sutra is not the fountain of all knowledge, and anyone who writes an article on there and gives you advice, these top 10 lists, you must do this, you must do that, that's something that worked for them. And it worked for them usually 6 months ago. So you're getting out-of-date information about someone else's company, which is probably not much use to you. So stop going, oh, you must do these things, because that's wrong. Last week, 3-4 weeks ago, Gary Newman from Roth said, don't show it shows. It's too expensive, it's wasting money. Well, it's wasting money for him maybe, but for a lot of people it's not. And you can't make decisions based on other people's businesses. My next one, this one's good. Just make a good game. Well, you know what, that's actually rubbish, because there are plenty of terrible games that sell millions of copies. The War Z, or Infestation Survival Stories, has sold maybe 2 million copies to date, and that's not by anyone's standard a good game. The concept of telling someone to make a good game is also kind of offensive, because if you're indie, you don't want to make a good game, you want to make your vision, and whether people find that good or not, it's irrelevant, because you want to make your vision. Other people's opinions of that, if they're good, fine, but really, you can't pander to people when you're trying to be indie. Really, I find that kind of annoying, patronizing. It's often said by people who made games that were successful and they think their game is good. A game that's good for someone is not good for someone else. And making a game that's interesting to the press is good, but it's actually not the biggest thing. It's maybe 5-10%. There are much better things you can do for getting your games sold. You have to fail 51 times first. This is a piece of advice obviously from Rovio about how they made so many games before Angry Birds became famous, and that's fine. But really it's about creativity. It's about not giving up on your vision. That's That's a really good piece of creative advice, but it's a terrible piece of business advice, because if you don't know why you failed after the third game, you need to reassess what you're doing, why your PR, why your marketing's failing, why is your game failing, why are people not picking up, why are people not talking about it. Next one. Steam's flooded. Oh, there's millions of games coming out. Oh. Yeah, there's 1,500 games came out on Steam this year, and most of them are garbage. If your game is garbage, then fine, you've got a problem. If you're not going to do any PR or marketing, fine, you've got a problem. But most of those games don't have good PR, and they don't have good marketing, and they're not good games. If you do any of that, you'll be 10% above them already. So, that's not worth being upset about. Just do the minimum amount of work and you'll be way above them. So there's not an argument. The whole indie bubble stuff is rubbish, because I'm not part of a global network of indies or something. It's about just putting yourself slightly ahead of everyone else, and no one else is making the effort, so you can get ahead of them really quickly. Next one is the indie clique conspired against me. I've seen a grown adult write this, and people agree with them. There's some indie clique conspiring against them. Rami or someone is hunting them down and destroying their PR or something. I don't know. Frankly, I'm not greatly loved in the indie community. I've never been to GDC. I don't really go to the States. I've not been to San Francisco. I don't know any of those guys. Generally, I can still manage to sell my game. I know people who completely stay away from any indie gathering, have no interest in any of those groups of people, and their games still sell. So there's not really an indie clique, and they're not conspiring against you. You're just kind of not doing very good PR and no one's buying your game. So how do we break the lucky indie myth? So the industry press is dominated by one-hit wonders. We look at Notch, Phil Fish, things like this. They're good. They create stories. There's narratives there, but obviously they're more interesting because they made a lot of money, and the celebrity factor there. It's not actually very good for building plans about your business. So the information that we do have is sporadic. It's incomplete and qualitative. A graph that someone puts on Karma Sutra, that's great, but actually I need a CSV file. I need to look at the actual data, not your assumptions based on the data or a badly plotted graph. A lot of people talk about stuff and it's qualitative. They've looked at their data or they've formed opinions. That's really not useful for you as an indie. So again, celebrity musings, just not good business advice. I love Notch's tweets, they're hilarious. But when Pocket Gamer picks them up and turns them into news and people start commenting on them and discussing them as if they were serious, really, really bad. And so we need to look at sustainability. So who is sustainable? Let's look at introversion. Let's look at Mode 7. Let's look at all these studios that have been around 15 years. Grey Alien Games, Jake Burkett-Smith. He's released Regency Solitaire recently. He's doing really well, but he's been releasing games for the best part of a decade. And these studios are still around, and they don't make huge money, but they pay their staff, and they don't have massive redundancies every 6 weeks. So we need to look and build upon their successes. So how do we swim? So the best form of funding for an indie is sales. We've really just sell your game. You can get grants, you can get tax breaks, you can get all these things, but if you're not selling your game, you're not going to get sustainability, because you want long term. These things come in as big chunks of money, whereas sales is just a constant dribble, and you can plan around that constant kind of income. You can see it going up, you can see it going down, and you can sell almost any game. So you can get that income from pretty much any game that's playable and people want to play, and people want to play pretty much any game. So don't go, oh, it has to be really good. Oh, we're not going to do that. You don't need to compromise your vision. So make the games that you want to make, and be properly indie, not just someone who says they're indie but then is aiming for commercial success constantly by releasing these free-to-play things or putting things they didn't really want in their game, but they knew that some big YouTuber would pick up on. No, you don't have to do that. And it's not difficult. This stuff is not difficult, and I'm going to show you how I do this. And I'm an idiot, right? So if I can do it, you can do it. Unless you're more of a moron than me, then God help you. So how do we do this business development pipeline? How do we get people playing your game and selling your game? So we need to figure out your cost to your company per hour. People don't do this, and they need to do it, because any decision that you make based on your time is costing your company money. And this is not about how much you want to earn per hour, this is how much you cost your company per hour. So I don't earn much per hour from my company currently. I don't take a wage, but I'm not cheap to my company. If I disappear for an entire day, we lose thousands of pounds, because I've got 2 staff here that will just stare at their screens going, don't know what I'm doing now. So you need to work that out. How much does it cost? How many sales do you lose? What happens if you don't answer your support calls? So yeah, next point, we need sales, and we need sales, and we need sales. This is obvious. We need marketing. Marketing's really good because it sells your game, but we also need PR. PR is way better because PR sells your game for you. Other people start talking about your game. Your community goes out and goes, you got to play this game. Some big YouTuber goes out and goes, you got to play this game. Or, the press go, this game is really interesting, and here's why. So selling any game, you need to build sales estimates with an upper and lower bound. This is really important. You need to understand how your game's going to go into the market, as it were, and how that market's going to react to it. You can do this with data from similar games. You think your game is really, my game's, no one's ever made a game like this before. Really? You really think your game's entirely unique? If you're making Her Story, that's fine, or something like that. Maybe your game is entirely unique. But if you're making another base builder, another platformer, another first-person shooter, your game is not unique, and there are similar games to it, and you can pick up their data. You can literally ask people for their data. Lots of people have just given me CSV files. I've just politely asked, hey, have you got some data I could nick? Yeah, sure, why not? If you're friendly to other people, they'll be friendly back. You can share your sales data with them. Hey, we're making a similar game. Do you want to see our sales data? Right? And you can appeal to people's egos. You can go, oh, how well's your game doing? And they'll tell you because they want to tell you. Don't ask them about their opinions on it though, because they'll be wrong. Complement this data with stuff from Steam Spy, VG Charts, all these other sites that have all these stats being pulled together. That allows you to build more estimates about more games. You can see the difference between real data and this estimated data that they have, and then you can make assumptions based on it, and that's really useful. And this page, what I've just explained here, this is what market research is, okay? That's all market research is. It's not actually really hard. You don't need the market research department. You don't need guys with degrees. You just need to do this, and that's basically 90% of what you need to do. So marketing, you need to send out PR emails. You need to talk to the press. How do you do this? You need to build a narrative around your game, and you need to not do the things here. So you need to not go, our product exists. No one cares that your product exists. That's great, but that's not a story. The existence of a game, the press get hundreds of emails a day. Our game exists. It's great. Saying it's the next Minecraft is also the worst thing you could do. Everyone does this. The press literally have mutes in their mailboxes saying, like, if equals next Minecraft, go to this folder, which we don't read. This exists, and if you do this, they will never even see your email. Right, the next thing is your crowdfunding exists. Too late. I mean, if your crowdfunding's already set up, no, you're too late. You can send a reminder to the press that your crowdfunding's about to happen once you've had 6 months of back and forth with them about your game and shown the public your game and they've got some interest in it. You can't just announce your Kickstarter and then expect people to cover it. A Kickstarter's not news. Crowdfunding isn't news. Here's our miserable sob story. Don't ever do this. I showed this to the editor of a large games site. In fact, 2 of them. Both of them kind of groaned when they saw it. You can't get away with sob stories. Occasionally, interesting things happen to you that are negative. The Indie Stone having all those issues, that was newsworthy. And it was a negative story, but they didn't send a press release going, here's our sob story or whatever. And you can only do it a few times, and everyone's seen it all before. So sadly, everyone's studio is always on the brink of collapse. We're a few months away always from having to lay everyone off. But this is why we sell games. We don't send sob stories to the press about it. And the last one, we are so controversial. Yes, that could work for you. Will it work for most people? No, the press are tired of it. The press were tired about it since like the early 90s. Carmageddon did this, and it actually ended up with them having to get the game rated. They got rated as an AO rating, and then they couldn't sell it anywhere. So, they couldn't market their game with an AO rating, and they couldn't sell it in a whole load of shops, and suddenly kids had to be ID'd if they wanted to buy it. Great. Well done. You just destroyed the sales of your game. So what do you do? Here's our unique selling point. So here you go. Here's the thing that sets us apart from every other game that we can find. And here's what will be interest to your site's readers, because you're trying to give them something that will give them page views. You don't want to give them a really kind of flat, here's the whole of our game. You want to give them the thing that they jump on you. Our game's great for storytelling. Our game's great for this. We've got a brand new mechanic that's in no other game. The other one is our team have unique experiences, skills, and worldviews to talk about this. And this is why diversity in your team is good, because if you have interesting people in your team, you have interesting things to talk about. If you think about the Stalker team, GSC Game World ages ago, they were interesting because suddenly here's a Ukrainian game dev, and we haven't played any games from Ukrainian game dev anymore. Let's look about how their culture influences the game. Let's look at how this strange thing. Same with The Witcher. It's Slavic folklore. That's really interesting. That's really different. And if all else fails, here's some content so good that you can just copy paste it into your site. This is why videos do really, really well, because you give a video, they make a stub article around it, they paste the video, that gives them page views, and they didn't have to do anything for that, but they've got an interesting article out of it. So when do you start doing this? You just do it as soon as you can. You could start at a certain point, you could plan, I want to do 6 months, but really do it as soon as you can, because it's always better to do it early than do it late. If you start late, you're screwed. So you need to work ahead of that, and there's no such thing as like too much exposure beforehand. People say they get burnt out on this, but they actually don't. That people think they get burnt out on it, but genuinely there's the mere exposure effect, or if you're a softer science kind of person, it's the familiarity principle, which means every time you see something, you build it into your head. So one thing is brands. So every time you see a brand, you become familiar with it. People buy brands just because they know the name. They know the product to know better. And generally most people do. They know that the branded one isn't a better product, but they go, well, I know what it is, so I can just jump in and pick that up. And that's the same with a lot of games. You've got to be showing people your game, so they've seen it 3 or 4 times, and then they see it on Steam and they go, oh, I know that game, I'll pick that up. No one's going to see your game for the first time and be really super excited about it immediately and go out and buy it, compared to the people who have built up a model of that game in their head already, and so they know that, because you can get those impulse sales, but they really don't count for much. Right, so here's a bit more business studies for you guys. Kaizen is continuous improvement. It was started by the Japanese automotive firms, I think in the 1980s and 1990s. Because what they have is, like games development, they have a very long pipeline that's very expensive. And so what they did is they invested money at the beginning to make their pipeline flexible. So when they need to make changes, they can do it later on, and then those costs become reduced. So with a large initial investment in time and money, they can make smaller changes later on without it costing them large amounts of time and money. And this is why the Japanese completely stomped like Detroit, because Detroit had very hard fixed building pipelines, and they couldn't do anything when these terrible cars came out and no one was buying them. They had terrible steering and they needed to change it. So how do you do this with game development? Well, with game marketing, you need to release different moods, lengths of trailers. You need to see what people react to. You need to do cheap test spends. If you're going to do ads, you don't go, oh, we put ads up on this site and we didn't get any money, so we're never doing ads again. You need to change the ads up. You need to try them on different sites, see which ads get picked up on. I personally don't do ads. I think they're a massive waste of money, but they do make money for some people, and you need to test that. You need to look at visitor stats for your site. You need to see what people are reading, what they're looking at. We find that some of our screenshots are a lot more popular than the other ones. So if we're sending a press release out, we send those screenshots out because we know that those will get people to click on it. Change what you say in interviews. This is kind of hard to do because obviously sometimes you just want to do it entirely off the cuff. But I found that there are things which interest different groups of people and different journalists. There are a lot of anecdotes of Maia's development. Lots of funny things happen, like chickens running into lava and stuff. So there are plenty of things. If you're making a game, you have these anecdotes, but some of them may be amusing to programmers, but they might not be amusing to anyone else. And you need to kind of find that out. And so you can tell interesting stories to people. If they don't find it funny, tell a different one. And next time you come to an interview, don't tell the unfunny one. So you need to assimilate everything. Just collect data. Use your sales estimates to constantly assess everything you do against your value, your time value, and be like, am I wasting my money by doing what I'm doing? It's not bringing in any sales. We're not getting enough data. And once you've kind of done this a lot, you can just get a gut feeling for it. We go, no, this isn't worth our time. We can look at a game show and be like, this show isn't worth our time immediately. I can tell you straight right now. And then you can judge the future income of your product based on we know that maybe our ads are becoming less effective over time, so we're not going to sell as much. So we can have realistic expectations for what we're going to do in the future now. So we can say, hey, the next game, we're not going to have as big a budget. So we can reassess and redo that. Maybe make a smaller game, maybe make another game that I had planned and wasn't going to make, but I need to now. And by doing this, I don't have to stomp over my creativity. I don't have to go, oh, this game's going to need to be cut halfway through because we don't have enough money coming in. And if you don't like all this marketing and PR stuff, you can just pay other people to do it. There are some really good games PR firms. They have more data, they have more experience, they have more people, they have more manpower, and they can do it cheaper than you. So my cost per hour to my company is hundreds of pounds at the moment. A PR company, they're expensive, but they're nowhere near as expensive as programmer time. And I found them to be cost effective. I think any small indie can find them to be cost effective. A couple £100 and you're on every news site. I couldn't do that. And they're actually really good. They'll never take your money off you if you can't. If they think they can't do what you want them to do, they will try and give you a more realistic idea of what maybe you could try do. And there's a whole bunch of them. So Beef Jack, Volt PR, and other people. You go find them, talk to them, and because there are multiple ones, you can go, well, these guys gave me a quote for this, and they'll be really picky about trying to give you a quote, but you can actually just go, hey, look, give me a quote, otherwise you lose my business, and they'll give you a quote. So back to costs. PR and marketing efforts always work out cheaper than development. So if your game is not doing very well, you could say, let's write off the game, start on the next one. This one's not going to do very well. Let's create another 51 games until one does well. But then the games are really super expensive. Changing your PR and marketing plans cheap. A few weeks ago, people were talking about Sunset. People talked about Sunset and said, Sunset is doing badly because it's a bad game. And I went, no, because you can sell a bad game. Sunset was doing badly because the PR failed. And other people went, oh, no, Sunset did badly because it was a niche product. Whatever that means when there's 10 million people on Steam right now. And you can't sell a niche product. Well, you know what? I think you could probably sell. I was expecting Sunset to sell 20,000 on launch day. It was just a PR failure. I wasn't seeing it on sites. They said they run one set of adverts and they didn't A/B test them. They didn't try them on other sites. And then people, no, it's a bad game. It's not a bad game. And if it was, it wouldn't matter anyway. You can sell terrible games. That's the point of doing business development marketing. A terrible game is something in itself. Hey, look at this really flawed game. Let's explore why it's flawed. People buy it to check out why a game is bad. So making games is really expensive. Doing marketing, throwing another £100 at your marketing to sell thousands more copies is a complete no-brainer. Don't write off your game because your first week sales didn't do very well. So here's how we do it in the wild. This is a graph of all Maia's sales to date. We've got direct sales in black. In blue, we've got our Steam sales. We've got player numbers on Steam in red. We've got things like YouTubers, all these little yellow blobs along the bottom of the graph. Those are things, and you can see all the updates we've done. And every update that's numbered had a video come out with it too. So we can see how much shows affect our game, how much updates affect our game, how much an update with no sale does, how much an update with no PR does. And as you can see, we can see patterns. We can see how PR pushes help us, how PR pushes can happen weeks before the big announcement. And then the big announcement comes out, and while there's no press on the day of the announcement, because people have seen it, they see the announcement come out, they buy the game. You can see that sales actually maybe are not so good for us because we get bumps, but they're nothing near as good as just a good PR push or a good update. And so we aggregate every piece of data, every piece of coverage we get, we mark, we put into a big CSV file, and we can visualize this. And so you can visualize your own stats and data. You can visualize it against other people's data, so you can see how they're doing and what they did. And so you don't need to read Gama Sutra, you write your own Gama Sutra article. So with our data, we can write our own advice. So we found out, for example, this works for us. Don't read this and think this will be advice for you. We found for our specific game, with our specific PR plan, big YouTubers, not really worth it for us. They have an okay conversion rate, but compared to a niche YouTuber, someone that's interested in space games or base building games, absolutely no comparison. And we've also found that deep sales aren't worth it for us because we basically just lose money looking at our wish list and asking people who have bought the game. They're actually waiting for the game to be finished or good, not for it to be cheap, which is interesting. People pay money for a really deep, in-depth game, and they're waiting for Maia to be that. And that's an important distinction to make. Goddess came out and we're on sale for 75% off weeks after release, still in early access. And it was infuriating. I'm a Kickstarter backer of Goddess, and I'm like, why? As a business person, why are you doing this? As a developer, why are you doing this? And as a Kickstarter backer, why are you doing this? As someone who wanted to play it, what are you doing? I found that narrated gameplay videos are really good. People like the sound of my voice. Some people too much. But people sit down and they put it on another screen and they watch it for 25 minutes. Of trailers, people watch and they go, that's nice, interesting. But those ones don't appear on Reddit or they don't get shared on Facebook that much. Me playing the game is interesting. Seeing an actual player going through the struggles of how to play, that sells our game for us. And so, screw this indie luck stuff, this, they were lucky, or, the indie bubble's about to burst, there's so much going on, we can't do this, nope, you can rise above all of it, you just need to have a little bit of diligence, and you'll do well. So, you can follow me on Twitter, and you can email me anytime, and that's the address right there, and you can ask me any questions.